everybody, welcome back. This is Evie Lupine and today we are filming another video, this time with my dear friend Kayla and Brittany. You guys have probably seen Brittany on my channel before. We have done several videos together now talking about brats and service and BDSM relationships, all sorts of great stuff. For those of you who don't know, Kayla is another one of our friends. She's also Brittany's top, and they've done several videos together and live streams, things like that on Brittany's channel. And today, all of us are going to be talking about mistakes that we see newbies make when they're entering the scene, and hopefully as well giving some newbies some advice on how to not make those mistakes.
Yes.
When I see newbies enter the scene, I think part of the mistakes come from lack of experience and lack of knowledge about the scene, because honestly it's really hard when you're first getting involved in BDSM and you're first going to dungeons and munches to know what it's like before you really actually go there, because every different community kind of has their own individual vibe. The scene in New Orleans is going to be very different than the scene in Montreal, and the scene in Montreal is going to be different than London. And before you get to really understand exactly what the inner workings of your own individual community are, I think there are still some ground rules though that you can learn in general that are just like good things to know that the general BDSM community does that maybe you don't know about, or behaviors that you think are normally fine, especially in like vanilla culture or going to vanilla clubs that is like not okay in BDSM. So Brittany, why don't you start off? Is there anything that you see that always like sticks out to you whenever you go to events? It's like newbie alert.
I think you've made a video about this, but the like sub frenzy in the first year, you just want to like go and do everything and all the things. One of the things I always recommend people to do is, one, don't rush with titles. Like, it's totally okay to enter the scene. Like I was in it for 2 years before I officially was like bottom submissive, masochist. Like, but like those were a matter of me figuring it out, and also openness to changing is also good. So don't worry too much and don't put too much pressure on yourself to like know what you want, but at the same time be ready to, I guess, how do I say this, like formulate what you desire, if that makes sense. Because often what I'll do is I'll meet newbies and they're in the scene but they won't know what they're doing there, and I'm like, but you do know because you researched it. So be honest with maybe your sort of yourself, at least if you're not ready to talk to people. And I think that will give you a better idea of where you're headed, because when you meet people like us, we want to say, oh, you should go to this class if that's what you're into, or this can help you, and understand that every scene is different. So when I always recommend, I got a question the other day saying, you keep mentioning BDSM classes but I can't find any. Those are usually done by actual dungeons that are also run maybe as nonprofits, or you know, FetLife is always my go-to for events. And that's what I definitely want to recommend. And then when you go to those events, understand that you'll learn how everyone does it different, like everything differently, from rope to needle play to education and who's hosting the class. And it's okay to find different areas of BDSM that you are more comfortable with. Does that make sense? Like I'm sure it must be intimidating when you're going by yourself, especially, to find a scene that makes sense to the way you imagined it. And it's okay for your local scene maybe not to be that scene as well.
So I think I want to hit on 2 points that you brought up. One is, I think, rushing into titles. Like, I think that's really important. I know people who have started in the scene, and one, they feel really beholden to the label they first picked. And they're like, I know that I'm going to go in and I want to be a dominatrix. And then suddenly they start learning more about the community and they realize that actually maybe they have more switch tendencies, or maybe they're more of a mommy dom or something else. And trying to stick to the one label because you're worried about being judged for changing, or that you're worried about not being true to who you think you want to be in BDSM. So honestly, like if you're on FetLife and you're trying to pick a name there are lots of options that don't have anything to do that's like set in stone. Like you could pick exploring or kinkster or hedonist, anything that's kind of like a general label for kinksters without necessarily having to pick pet, dominatrix, little, whatever it happens to be that you think you might be. As well, I also see people that really invest a lot in labels, and so they're switching constantly. Like every other day it's like, today I'm a rigger, tomorrow I'm a dom, next time I'm a master, next time I'm a switch, next time I'm a Kajira. Like every other day is a different thing. And I think the process of self-discovery is really important and valuable, and especially when you're new, it happens really, really quickly. But especially on FetLife, again, I would probably just stick to like the title, and when you're introducing yourself to people in the community, honestly, when I have gone to munches here, I have not had a lot of people ask me like how I identify or what I am. Like that's not something that comes up immediately in conversation. But if it does, you say, oh, I'm new, I'm exploring, or these are the types of things I think I might be interested in. Because honestly, you won't really know, I think, until you've had some experience doing scenes and meeting people who identify with whatever labels you might be interested in using or think that you might want to use yourself.
Absolutely.
I agree. Exploring is a good one. If you're not 100% sure on what you're looking for, what you're going for, even outside of the slash you fall on, exploring is a great term for it. And you can tell people that. You can tell people, hey, if people ask what your whole deal is, you can be like, I'm just exploring. I don't know. I'm new and I want to learn more about this, and this, and that gives you kind of a wide option. But like I've seen people who do the whole flavor of the week title on FetLife, and I think that's okay. Like particularly if you're new, that's how you're figuring things out. And it's important for those of us who have been in the community for a while to realize that this may just be how you're exploring. A lot of people get a little stuck up about labels, and it's important for those of us who have been in the community for a while to remember how it was like when we first got in and how
personally attacked right
confused we were. Well, so I've been reading this book called Ties That Bind, and it's by someone who he's a therapist, and he's been writing letters to this publication for forever, and so this is a compilation of all his work. But one of those is like the fact that he in this particular essay he was talking about switches, where a lot of the old guard get kind of stuck up, oh, you're not a real this if you're a switch, or and I think that is something that people who have been in the scene for a while do have to be careful of, is getting judgy for new people or even people who don't necessarily identify the same as you. Because we were all there once. We were all that new wide-eyed oh.
Okay, but can I say something that newbies do that I have never done? And maybe that's because I am on the S side of the slash. But something that was interesting is that I remember, I don't know how many DOMs or new people who have come in, been in the scene less than 6 months, who've come right up to me and been like, "Are you a little?" And I'm like, what? And they make these assumptions off my tattoos, or they'll want to play with me, and I'm like, cool, what's your skill set? 0 skill set. No, I don't want to play with a Dom who doesn't have a skill set. It's okay not to, if your intention is to be a Dom, please take the steps in order to understand what that means, because when you talk to someone who's been in the scene for almost 10 years, we have ideas. And the ideas are respectable in my head. And that's where my pretentiousness comes out, and I'm like, I don't think you're worthy.
For me, it comes out when I'm thinking about somebody who's brand new to the scene. They just turned 18. Maybe it's their 18th freaking birthday. They make a FetLife account and it says 19-year-old master, and it's that happens, and I don't want to judge them for doing it because that's such a it's a newbie thing to do, and I think it's something where I don't get defensive about the title so much as I do I'm
raise your eyebrow at least.
I'll raise an eyebrow and be like, I remember those days. It's just one of those things I think. Before people kind of really learn what the terminology means, they don't necessarily understand how important those terms might be to other people, or how seriously kind of labeling is sometimes taken by other people, good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
Because I think that at that point, they're just going off the fantasy.
Yes. Exactly.
Which is something that, again, people who have been in the scene for a while need to remember. It's the person that comes in and is like, yes, I'm a master, before they know anything about the community. They're playing into the fantasies that they've always had in their own head. I mean, speaking personally, I remember the ideas I came up with as an adolescent, and they were always very spicy, and I did a lot of alternative style roleplay with people on the internet.
As we all did.
So if that is all someone has to go off of, that's what they're gonna. That's familiar to them. It's not familiar in the context of the broader scene at large, but it is familiar to them. So
it's a transition between taking your fantasy into a community and learning how to be able to mesh those things together in a way where you feel like you're being honest to yourself, and that you're able to also coalesce into the community in a way that's not abrasive.
I will say one thing I dislike from anyone, any human who ever does it, is projecting a fantasy or assumption about who I am onto me. Because I get it, I'm cute and look at, you know what I'm saying? I get
precious,
it. Like I'm wearing
buns.
like, yeah, and I'm wearing like a kitty collar, and so automatically I have people who automatically hit up my Instagram or DMs
Cat,
or see
little, blah, blah, blah.
like just assumption after something. And the problem with that is like, hey, I'm a real person and I have like real feelings and I would like to be treated like that. So as a newbie, I think sometimes they do it because they think they have to. You don't have to. You can ask questions, and I always say there's no dumb questions. I would much rather have a newbie ask me the questions that sound dumb than make the assumptions that make you look like an idiot. Because those assumptions can also be predatory and you don't know it, because I know you don't mean it that way. But when I have people come up to me, and I had one person saw me across the dungeon, walked up to me, and I liked their coat and I complimented their coat, and they were like, how do you feel about being tied up? And I was like, that's your opening line? Like, not my name, how are you, I'm a human. I don't give a fuck about your rope. Like now, officially, that moment on, I never wanted to
No,
talk.
we'll never get there.
I was like, I don't want, move along. Like, I have no interest.
It comes down to not only like your own titles, but also like assuming other people's identity is something that I think once you kind of learn about BDSM, at least this is something that happened to me when I was like really new to the scene, is once I figured out about kink, I was always trying to figure out what other people were into.
Yeah.
And doing that and making assumptions about people is not great behavior, as interesting as it and exciting as it is to figure out, ooh, I wonder what they're into. I bet they're into this, I bet they're into that. Like, you kind of have to like shut that part off and be open to like asking people how they identify, or like just not even going into a conversation necessarily with the goal of like figuring out, ooh, I wonder if this person is a dom, or what if this person is a submissive, but just figuring out who they are as a person. And that kind of leads me into like point number 3, which is like people, like when you get into the BDSM community and you're first learning about it, obviously that's like, it can kind of become your focus in life, is like the BDSM aspect of it, and kind of having to learn that the people in the community, while they do BDSM, are whole people and they have other interests. And while they may be a dom, they may not want to be your dom, or may not be dom in this moment, or may not be submissive in this moment, and not defining people entirely by what they do just in BDSM.
Oh my gosh, yes. One thing I thought about while you were saying that though is not only getting to know people as whole people, but also not worrying too much about whether or not they see you that way either. Because like, I think sometimes our identities are really important to us, but like if you go to a munch, you won't be in toppy usually headspaces or dommy headspaces, right? If you go to a protocol party, it will be a parent who's server who's not. Usually like there's a collar or a scarf or something. But then if you're at a regular BDSM dungeon, they have like a social area, they have a non-social area, so like a play area, and this will allow you to have an idea. But I take those opportunities as moments to just talk about whatever. I find that the way I decide if I'm going to play with somebody is not what they do in BDSM, but who they are as a whole person. Because I think it's interesting when I meet people who are really well versed in like X, and I'm like, I wonder if we can incorporate something like that into whatever we have in common, because usually it's a spark. Like I'll talk to someone, I'll be like, oh,
you seem interesting.
You know, I didn't see you that way necessarily, but when you say this, like maybe we could talk about this, and then if we're clicking, it's great. But I did not enjoy when I first started in Seattle, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like they mean it really well, but so many people were like, FetLife hit me up, or hey, I saw you at the dungeon, would love to talk over drinks to see if you'd like to play, and I'm like, why? I felt kind of like, why would you even want to play with me? You don't know, like, how do you know it will be good?
But you have beautiful hair, Brittany.
Like, I know, really.
It's pretty.
A lot of people made the assumption that I'd be a really good rope bunny, but I have no patience for rope.
Exactly.
Like, zero patience.
They didn't get to see the bratty Brittany yet.
The only person who gets to tie me up is her top, and literally because one, he ties real fast, and two, he beats you along the way. So it's kind of like, I don't get bored.
Yeah.
But like, no offense to rope people, it's really beautiful and I get it, but
the 45 minutes it takes to get in the air.
Dude, I've seen so many scenes go so slow, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm fall asleep watching, and I'm a voyeur. I never fall asleep watching. So it's just not my kink, and it's not to say that it's wrong at all. That's not what I'm saying. But because it is so, for me, I don't like to make the assumptions that anyone else is into what I'm into either.
Yeah.
You know, it's just easier. Plus, people are so nice in our community, and they're so willing to talk to you, and DMs are great, that I feel like it's a wonderful opportunity to just be like, oh my gosh, I would love to have, like, I'd rather have people ask me a million questions. Like, because I love to help people along the way. And we're really nice people. Like, we're dope people. So
we're all weirdos. And usually we're the weirdos of the weirdos. Like, we all have our own, like, usually a lot of us are, like, video game nerds, or we really like tabletop games.
Yes.
Or we're really into, like, model trains or something
There's
like that.
a lot of crossover.
A lot of
Yeah.
crossover with lurkers or something, you know? So there's a lot of crossover
many.
already. So a lot of times you're able to find really interesting conversations with people about like things that are not related to BDSM at all. And I think a lot of us, because of our experiences being outcast in so many different aspects of our lives, a lot of us are really like friendly. Yeah, you meet the one grumpy person, or you meet somebody who's having a bad day and maybe doesn't really want to talk to new people. I know there are several people in the scene here that they specifically, because they do really heavy play, don't really enjoy talking to newbies, because a lot of times newbies see their like crazy ass scenes and go, I want that, and they feel really uncomfortable being approached that way, because it's like you have like a year to 2 years of experience you need to have before you can like get to this like
and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Please understand that I think most of us through the scene, like, we've had to really take our time, learn ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Like, learn yourself, and that's the best part. I think that's why I like going to the classes, and that's why I like going to support groups. They have a lot of, at least I've been spoiled enough in cities where they had a lot of really good support groups. That was super helpful. BDSM bless you.
Oh my god, I'm gonna make a shirt that says that.
Yes.
I'd buy that shirt.
I would buy that shirt. Please do that. Please do that. But I would really encourage you to do that. And then don't worry, like, even if you want, in your head, you're like, okay, one day I want to hang someone upside down, blah, 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 blah. That's great. That's a good goal.
Yeah.
Start the process of learning that, and don't worry if it takes you a longer time in your head to get to that point. I know it can be frustrating. I don't know about you guys, but I have had things that I've wanted to be really good at that I don't have the skill set for yet. And I'm 8 years in. And I just accept it. Like, I accepted that I'm not there yet, and that's fine. Like, I will eventually be there, and it's about finding, I think, peace within myself and, like, moving towards that. I actually talked to Evie about this last night, about, like, subspace as an example, and I think a lot of newbies are like, subspace is the goal. I've experienced subspace less than 5 times.
Yeah, I've experienced, like, probably about that same amount. Like, that's another thing I think a lot of submissives, especially who are new to the scene, think that, like, subspace is the goal of the scene. Or if you don't have subspace during a scene, it was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I think people really romanticize the idea of subspace and think that, like, that should always be the goal. And especially with rope and with impact play, I think that thought happens a lot. But there are so many different ways of experiencing BDSM and so many different headspaces you can play with. Like, I think getting to subspace requires, for most people anyways, requires very specific parameters to happen, and you can still have really, really good scenes that don't fulfill all the parameters you need to have subspace happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Not going into a scene, like, going into a scene with a set, like, these are the things we're going to do is a good idea, particularly for someone new. Opt-in negotiations are much better than opt-out negotiations to start with. What I mean by that is, opt-in, you set a expectation, we are going to do this, 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 and this for our scene, and that's it. That's all you do. You don't add anything else, that you solely work with the tools or work in the way that you specify. That will keep you safe. That will make sure that, or safer. There's nothing unexpected coming with that. You know what's going to happen. Trust me, it does not, that knowing what's going to happen doesn't take away from the scene.
No.
That experience is still going to be just as great as if you didn't know what was going to happen.
Absolutely.
And maybe better, because that way you can prepare yourself for what you know is coming. Opt-out negotiations are typically for people who are more experienced in the scene, and people who are more experienced in the scene who have played together multiple times. Opt-out negotiation is, these things are off limits, and we can do anything else. And that is a more risky style of play, because you leave that up to your top to know you as a person, or your bottom to trust that you as a top are not going to overstep their boundaries. And it can be a very rewarding style of play, but typically it's best to leave that for when you have more experience, for when you've been with this person and you've seen with this person a lot. Because it takes time to get to know a person. Just like in vanilla culture, it takes time and discussions and pitfalls and relationships are built over time. Relationships don't just happen overnight. So taking that time to get to know the person before you do risky things like opt-out negotiations is important.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about often like newbies will get into a scene either as a bottom or a top, and they'll make the assumption that their play partners will know what to do. And my recommendation if you're new is, one, when you go to the dungeon and you see scenes, you can make a pretty good assumption that some of those scenes, if not a lot of them, are with new play partners. Like a lot of the time, because the dungeon is a safe place to play, I will go with my experienced friends or my new friends or whatever, but it might be the first time we've ever played together.
Yeah.
And so you're still learning that person. I've had scenes that have lasted 15 minutes because the energy was just weird and like it didn't quite work. That's not bad. In BDSM, I know I know it can sometimes feel like a failure, like if you safe word or do any of these things, but honestly, it is such a beautiful learning experience. And I like this community because even if things go wrong, most of us, I think, understand that it might. And then we can still come back from it. It's not the end of the relationship. It's not the end of the scene. It's not the end of, it's just like, okay, we'll renegotiate and come back to it.
Yeah. This didn't work. Let's try something different.
Yeah. So don't freak out if you are worried about that happening. If you don't have the skill set, that's also okay. Nobody is raised in vanilla culture to know how to throw a flogger or understand how breath play can be safe or unsafe.
Yeah.
So don't freak. If you don't have mentors in your area and you don't have classes, I would honestly recommend traveling and like going out and doing these things, but there are ways to learn how to do things safely. And don't be surprised if you ask somebody to play, let's say you're a top, and the first thing they ask you is, how do you safely do X, Y, and Z if you want to do it to me? And then have it to explain that. Because that's one of the things I do with people. It's like breath play as an example. I'm like, how do you choke somebody? And like, if they don't know, then I'm like, okay, then
I just do the blah, blah,
I just do the thingamajig, you know? Then we don't get to do that thing. And that's fine, but we need to go to a class or talk to a medical professional or understand that there's a lot of harm that could happen. And at the end of the day, I don't know what your intent is when you're going into BDSM, but for me, it's always to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I think that scenes allow you that opportunity, and the intimacy you get to experience with your people allow you that opportunity. And at the end of the day, I don't know what your intent is when you're going into BDSM, but for me, it's always to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I think that scenes allow you that opportunity, and the intimacy you get to experience with your people allow you that opportunity. And overall, I really like this lifestyle. And I want new people to feel safe in it.
Yeah.
But I want you guys to avoid those mistakes that we've seen so many people make, that they don't come back.
Yeah.
Because they're so scarred from the experience. And I would like you to not have to do that, because the lifestyle is really, really dope.
There's definitely one point I want to hit on. I know this video is probably going to be a bajillion minutes long. Sorry.
I love it. I love it.
I think there's a lot of newbies who come into the scene not understanding how sex and BDSM connect and overlap, or if they do or not. Like, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, so like, okay, but like, what is the dungeon? Is it like a giant sex party?
Yep.
Like, is it just an orgy? Like, or when they hear me talk about experiences, I've had a dungeon, they're like, wait, and then did you have like sex after?
Did you have the sex?
Like, I think vanilla culture, I think sex is always the end goal. Like, of a intimate activity with a person. A lot of times, unless if it's like anything that's like romantic or like super like intimate in a way, people always assume that sex is going to be what happens at the end. Whereas I think people who have been in the BDSM scene for a while, and there are people who definitely, they are 100% in the lifestyle, super invested, and they always have sex after BDSM, which is great. But I think a lot of us who are lifestylers separate sex and BDSM play to some degree. Like, sex can be an accompaniment to a scene rather than the purpose of having a scene to begin with. And a scene can be complete and fulfilling without having sex. Also, the relative rarity of sex in BDSM dungeons. Again, every different scene is different, and every party is going to be different too. There are some that are more explicitly sex focused than others. Right. For the most part, in my experience going to different dungeons, I would say 1 out of 10 scenes maybe has something sexual involved with it, and a lot of it, when it does, the BDSM aspects are the focus rather than the genitals.
So the power.
The focus. Yeah, it's about the power. 1 out of 10 scenes maybe has something sexual involved with it, and a lot of it, when it does, the BDSM aspects are the focus rather than the genitals.
So the power.
The focus. Yeah, it's about the power. It's about being humiliated. It's about being finally being tortured, finally being let out of chastity after like 2 weeks or something. You know, it can be for a lot of different reasons. So I think if you're somebody who's new and coming into the scene for the first time, one, you don't need to be experienced with sex. I think the reason why that might be helpful is, I think, having experience negotiating something like successful sex can be a way of learning some of the skills that you need to have good experiences in BDSM. But you don't have to start there.
Yeah.
And also, people don't negotiate for scenes assuming sex is going to happen.
Right.
Most of the time. There are definitely people, and especially, not to say this is the only group that does this, but a lot of times older male doms who specifically look for younger female submissives will sometimes play into the assumption a lot of people have going in that sex is going to happen, and they will take advantage of that, which is really bad. But for the most part, people in the community assume that sexual touch is not going to be something that happens. But you still be very explicit about it in negotiation.
I think that that's not necessarily 100% true. I do agree that is something you have to be wary of, but people who have done spicy bedroom things and then come into the lifestyle looking for more spicy bedroom things. I went to kinky speed dating. It was basically you go and it's a speed dating format, and you talk to people and you see if you make any connections, see if you, in that like minute or so, meet a person that you want to follow up with and be like, hey, we should maybe do something sometime. Do you want to talk about that? One of the questions I led with, because I don't incorporate sex and play very often, is how often, like, what do you incorporate sex with your play? How often do you do that? And I got a lot of confused looks. I got a lot of people that were like, what do you mean sex and play? Like, what? Because that was all they had ever done. They were new to the scene, like formally new to the scene, but that was all that they had ever done was incorporate sex and play. So like, it's important, like that's a good question to ask when you go into negotiation, because some people, that is their thing. That is why they are here, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot of people that they can pair up with that's what they're here for. But
the assumption is like...
The assumption is where things start to go wonky.
If it helps, I am celibate for the next, like within 12 months, I'm going a year of celibacy, and I have like 3 scenes planned while I'm here. So like the celibacy, like I got that question, I'm like, how can you be celibate in BDSM? I didn't even think that would be an issue, because like for me, sex is never the focus of my BDSM, unless it's like a really specific primal scene with a lover. But like I don't have, that right now. So like for me, my focus is power exchange and intimacy and connection, and that's really beautiful. And then I guess one of the things that in my head, don't be afraid as a newbie to feel pressured to say yes to a scene from people that you are like established, or that you think, oh my gosh, I don't want to make this person mad. No is a complete sentence in BDSM dungeons. Like I have yet, and maybe there are places that don't practice this, but I've yet to go to a scene space that would disrespect my no.
Are occasionally, it's particularly if it is a play party that is geared toward newer people, there's occasionally that issue where some people, you feel pressured. If people don't accept no as a complete sentence from you, go find a DM, go find someone who's running things, go find, if you come up to a DM and you say to the DM, hey, this person isn't respecting my boundaries, I told them no, I didn't want to talk to them, I didn't want to play with them, even if you don't want anything to do with this person, if you just want them to leave you alone, you can go up to the DM and be like, hey, this person isn't respecting my boundaries that I laid out. I asked them very politely to stop like bothering me, to stop talking to me, to respect the no that I don't want a scene with them, and then when they pushed, I didn't want them to talk to me, but they still did.
Right.
That DM will throw that person out on their butt so fast, because the people who are running events and the people who are in charge of, like, who are DMing for events, they want to keep you safe. They want to foster an inclusive environment. They want to make sure that everyone is having a good time. They want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Because I think the community as a whole, we care about each other so much. We want to keep each other safe.
And you can tell. I went to my first party at the dungeon here, and I went alone, and I walked in, and the DM, like, greeted me, hi, how are you? And I was like, hi, I'm new to the area, and we talked, and he was like, you can talk to this person, they're really established, and I talked to that human, and right away, that human and I talked for like a couple hours, and I mentioned wax play, and the human was like, do you want to do a wax scene? I can do like more like a tutorial, or we can do like a scene. And I was like, can I have references? And they were like, absolutely, provided me with current and past references, the DM vouched for them, and their openness, they're like, oh yeah, whatever you need, you can call me next week, you don't even have no pressure if you decide to cancel. It was one of those things where I realized that this human wasn't like, wasn't like, oh, I need to play with, it was more like, hey, you can if you want, I have the skill set, you seem like good energy, and they are somebody that I've played with multiple times, and they're not a stereotype. Like, for BDSM, for me, I think there's this idea, because sex might be the focus, like, you have to play with somebody that you're sexually into. I do not play with humans I'm sexually into. I play with humans whose energy I am into.
Yep.
Like, oh my goodness, like, this energy is so good. And that, for me, I don't know how your brain works, but, like, if I'm attracted to your energy, I don't care whatever preconceived notion I have about you sexually. Like, it could turn sexual, it could not turn sexual, but that's not the point. The intent is the intimacy, which, oh my gosh, that scene was, like, still one of my favorites. Even though a newbie walked into my scene and told me I had a nice body, i.e., don't walk into scenes, newbies.
Yeah, it's not considered polite to, like, be like, while the scene is still happening, wow, you look great. Like, don't.
That is
do
like
that.
the most offensive. Like, I have never been more offended in my whole life. Like, I don't give a fuck what you think about my body. I'm in the middle of a thing here.
We're doing a thing.
We're doing a thing.
So why don't we talk about that then?
Yeah.
What?
I do want to put a pin in a few points before
Please,
we move on. So what Kayla was saying earlier about people at the kinky speed dating event who were confused about, like, what do you mean not doing sex and BDSM? I think the people who have that perspective of, like, they always pair sex and BDSM, I find that there's not very many of them that are, like, regulars in the community.
That's true.
They tend to go into the community to find a person, take the person, and then go back into private. And that's totally fine. Like, if the community is a way for you to meet somebody that you can have private interactions with, that's great. You don't need to do that. You can if you want to. I think in general, people who are kind of the people you meet at Munches who are there every single week, for the most part, if they are doing sex and scenes, is with, like, already established partners who they've played with non-sexually first.
Our intent is not to make fun of newbies. Our intent is to literally make it so you have a good time.
Yep.
And that's our important, because we want more people who want to be in this lifestyle in the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a good lifestyle. It's not for everybody, but for those of you who desire it deeply, you can find really good friends. And honestly, at this point, I don't really have vanilla friends. Like, because
I can't explain this shit to, like...
It is so nice, like, being like, can you guys do this weird thing? And then being like, we could make that happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
hey, we guys think about this.
I love it.
I do want to touch on respecting scene space. So when you go to a dungeon or a place like a play parties where something where BDSM is happening in large scale with multiple people, or even if it's just a party where people happen to be scening in the corner and everyone else is just kind of hanging around talking. We've done, like, there have been parties here like that. It's really exciting to see a thing happen. I've watched scenes that it just, like, blew my mind. Like, oh my god, that's so cool, that's amazing. And people usually don't mind getting compliments. People usually like hearing that you liked what they did. It's a little bit of an ego stroke to be like, oh my god, you were so amazing in that thing. Don't do that until everything is done. Not just their scene has come to an end. Wait until they clean up. Wait until if the people that are involved with that scene clean up and then go and, like, are huddled together kind of in a space, like if they're sitting on the couch really close to each other and kind of just, like, off in their own little world. Wait until they break from that to go up and talk to them about it. Some people have clear flags that they are in aftercare mode. This is my aftercare sweater. I frequently walk around the dungeon in a big cloak, and if I put my hood up, that means I'm not talking to anyone because I'm in aftercare. So people have ways of signaling that, but some people don't. So you want to make sure that the interaction between the two people or the multiple people that were in the scene is completely finished before you approach them.
I usually wait till they talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
Usually I wait for them to
initiate
and then
contact.
I'm like, are you good? Like, can I talk to you now? Or, like, because if they've talked to other people, like, if they're walking around, you can totally, sometimes you can tell. But again, maybe we're also experienced, so we can tell. It's okay to be cautious.
Yeah. And you can always ask. Like, I think that's something you don't have to, you don't have to jump into the conversation with, oh my god, that was great. You can be like, or even go up to the top or somebody who's not in the aftercare that was part of the scene. You'd be like, hey, do you know if it's okay if I talk to so-and-so? And then you go up to so-and-so and you say, are you, if it's, like, ambiguous and you're not sure if they are in aftercare or not, either be super cautious and don't interact at all, but if you need to leave in 20 minutes and you really want to find out what their FET name is so that way you can message them later, then you'd be like, are you okay talking right now? And then they can say yes or no. And that should be fine, and that's definitely a lot better than jumping into a middle of scene and be like, oh my god, you look so hot in that bondage. Like, don't do that, please.
Also, don't ask for people. Don't ask to use people's things when they're in the middle of something.
Oh my god.
I recently we were in a large open area, and I had someone come in and ask to use a lighter that we were using for the wax play that we were doing. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like, it may seem incidental, like, it may seem like it's not super involved, but you don't want to break the interaction between those people. As someone who has had that happen, it can either be mildly annoying, or it could ruin the scene. Mm-hmm. It could, you, like, having someone come into your space when something intense is happening, mm-hmm. Either one will take you totally out of it, or two, I've had it scare me to the point where I'm like, I need to stop everything now because I don't feel safe, mm-hmm. because I don't know what's happening. Give scenes and people who are scening a healthy boundary, like a bubble, of like, I'm just gonna wait until they're done. If you want to learn about a thing, ask them afterwards. If you want to know about a specific toy that they used, ask them afterwards.
Right.
So scenes start to aftercare end. You shouldn't break into that interaction.
Right.
Once aftercare ends, then usually people are fine if you want to come up and talk. Like, I'm super happy to, like, if someone comes up and like, oh, what kind of candles do you use? What kind of flogger was that? I'm happy to talk about that, particularly if it's something that I like a lot. I'm happy to give recommendations, but after everything is over.
And, like, the last thing with that guy, it was a private party at the dungeon, which means that he had to, see, when you go to a dungeon, usually, everyone I've been to, they have, like, a form you have to sign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The form has the rules for a reason.
Yeah.
You need to read that. It's not a joke, because here's the problem. We assume you've read it. Mm-hmm. So when you violate our consent by walking into a scene, we're assuming you're doing it maliciously and cruelly.
Yeah.
Because you can't get into the dungeon unless you've signed that paper.
Yeah.
So we can, like, right away, you become enemy number one to my brain, which means I have to take a second to be like, new person, probably did the stupid thing and didn't read the paper, because it's explicit. Like, it says it right there. Do not walk into people's scenes and ask for consent. So it looks bad just in general. And I don't know about you guys, but I notice newbies and I keep tabs on them. Mm-hmm. Because as a community member, I want to make sure that the new people coming in aren't predators coming in or people who are going to put people in danger. And then I love it when newbies ask questions. I think it shows that they're invested. Yeah. I consider BDSM like any other skill or lifestyle. It takes effort and work, and it's a skill thing. Like, I'm now switching into top space after like 8 years, and that means I'm now learning how to properly throw a flogger, how to do things, or how to paddle, or where to hit on the body, and I have to really pay attention because somebody is asking me to care for their body, and I need to make sure I know what I'm doing. And so no matter where you are in your journey, it's also okay to feel like you're new to sections of it.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, that would be a video. Experience people who are still new in certain areas. Because we have a tendency to get really like, I've been in the lifestyle a decade, but all I know is this one thing.
Yeah.
So when you start
to get oddly specialized sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's fine too, but just, it's okay to also admit that.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Gosh, I could not, like I always say, I can't tie a knot to save my fucking life. So like rope is not a skill I have at all.
And rope takes so long to learn.
That's why I use scarves. I tie a scarf, that's easy. I cannot do rope. I'm afraid of ruining people's, like, you know, like I'm just, oh my gosh.
Which is fair, because rope is a dangerous activity, and it takes so long to learn how to do properly.
You know, and I think that was part of the inspiration for this too, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about how newbies might see like, oh, rope as being an easy way in, but like rope is really dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with, what was that? Oh, breath play is really dangerous.
Yep.
Like, I know Tumblr has all the choking things, but someone just died. An experienced human who's been in our scene forever just killed his boyfriend because he miscalculated breath play.
Yeah.
And like, no matter how experienced you are, we are dealing with pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, and I think at some point either we will or I will, somebody will make a video where we do talk kind of more in depth about specifically types of play that get perceived as safer by new people than they really are.
Yes.
Or that they think is a good jumping off point, but maybe they need to kind of build some basic skills before they get to that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is there anything that we wanted to touch on that we haven't yet that we want to make sure we get out in this video?
Just that we want you here. We just want you to be safe and happy.
Yes.
So take us as like older siblings or older like mentors who are just telling you like, welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Proceed with caution because it's totally fine to go slow. You are not in a rush. You could be in this lifestyle for a million years. Even if you're coming in a little later in life, and it doesn't matter your age. New does not mean age. It just means new.
Yeah.
Enjoy it because we're here to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I think take things slow, like she said, is a great one. Don't be afraid to learn as much as humanly possible. I like learning. I think it's great. I love to like learn new facts and new skills. And not being afraid to learn new things also comes along with don't be afraid of change. The expectations you have coming into the scene may not ever happen, depending on what they are. But as you learn things and as you get more familiar with things, don't be afraid of those expectations and wants and needs evolving, because they will over time. It's just humans change.
Yep.
And as you learn more about a thing, your expectations of that things are going to change. And it's exciting. Be excited about things changing. Be excited about learning. And I think that'll serve you really well. If people can tell you're excited about stuff, just to be here, if you're excited about the lifestyle, we're going to be excited with you. And we're going to do anything we possibly can to help foster that excitement.
All right, so I think that is everything for now. Like I said before, we could talk about this for hours probably.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any comments or questions for any of us, let me know down in the comment section below. We'll do our best to answer your questions. Link to Brittany's things and Kayla's things will be in the description box, as well as related videos. So if you are a new person and you're hoping to learn more about things like red flags, what a munch is like, how to vet somebody, links to videos like that will be down in the description box. So please check those out, as well as other additional resources if you want to see those. If you want to see more from me, my social media will be down there as well, like always. And if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe and support me on Patreon. That is the best way to support and fund this channel and make videos like this possible. Thank you both so much for being here and being part of this video. This is great.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to do it again soon.
Yes.
And until you guys come back to my channel, hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.